Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for having us here at the Rise of AI. My name is Thomas Neubert, and I'm very, very proud to be here as a native German. Nestor and I are visiting from beautiful California, Silicon Valley. So we have a little bit of an outside-in kind of a view, and hopefully we can get that across a little bit. What I would like to do is I like to give a quick, 3-minute overview of what the Transatlantic AI Exchange is, and then we go right into the AI index report. Now, to start, I want to refer back to a conversation that I had, or contact with Fabian. I was here last year, and it was energetic. I loved the conference. And then a few months ago, I called Fabian and I said, listen, I'm a huge fan of the so-called AI index report. And I read the whole thing back to back last year, kind of a geeky thing, but it was very, very informative. And there was, what, 300 plus pages?
Yeah, 300 pages. I think maybe the only person other than me who read it front to back ever. So, well done, Thomas.
So I liked it. It was a very helpful report with all the statistics, and I used it quite a bit. So I called Fabian and I said, listen, what about the idea, with all the hype around AI, to actually bring the editor-in-chief of this particular report to Rise of AI and actually present firsthand all the bolts and knowledge that's behind this report. So that's why I asked Nestor kindly to join us, and that's why we are here to share it firsthand. And the reason why I'm even prouder is that this morning, of all situations here, when Fabian actually introduced the conference, he referred actually to some of the slides that came from this gentleman. And then shortly after, I don't know if Tina is in the room, but Tina Kluver also presented some stuff, and she also referred. So there may be other presentation that is referring to the AI index report. And I have to say, with all the reports and analyst things that you get on a regular basis in your inbox, this thing came out on April 15, something like that?
A month ago at this point.
A month ago. I have never seen a report that has been reposted and shared and referenced within the first 48 hours ever. That's how I believe how valuable the report is, and that's why I'm proud to have Nestor with me. And by the way, if anybody's here, not necessarily from Berlin, but from North Rhine-Westphalia, which is my home state where I grew up and was born, we are also next week in Düsseldorf at 2 events talking about and presenting the AI index report. So with that in mind, let me just quickly talk about what the Transatlantic AI Exchange is. And I would like to invite everybody here to actually check it out and participate, because it's a win-win for everybody. It's an open platform that I started around 3.5 years ago. And it's an open platform for free. Everybody can participate. It started with a bunch of Zoom sessions during COVID to take the knowledge experts on AI from primarily Silicon Valley, North America, connect them with the experts from Germany, that's how it started, and help to use the knowledge from over there to kickstart the implementation of what was called AI Made in Germany. That's what this report was from years ago. So that's how it started. 3 years later, I'm doing this now full-time. I was at Intel as a GM until a year ago, but this hobby turned after the magical ChatGPT moment into a full-time position. And once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur, so I'm doing this full-time. So what I'm doing is, I have this platform, and please go there on LinkedIn or on the website. It's primarily for knowledge exchange. And there are many, many experts now, over 150, who have presented their knowledge to the audience. It's all for free. I'm not charging for anything. And if you have anything interesting to say that is valuable to the ecosystem, not a sales pitch, don't pitch your company, whatever is valuable to the ecosystem, I am more than happy to pull you in my new generated podcast, but also to other sessions and conferences. So that's number one. Number two is obviously the networking event. And you see on the website who has already put their names and brands behind it. And it's also about conducting business. The VCs want to know more about entrepreneurial startups that are coming out of Silicon Valley. People over there, investors particularly, want to know what's happening in Europe, the startups. There are corporations who are looking for research projects. There are research people who are trying to get the research projects commercialized into the hands of corporates or, for example, startups. And all of that is being nurtured through this particular platform. Here are some examples about the hybrid events. I did an annual European AI Summit in London, in Munich, and last year in Düsseldorf. I started a series called Remarkable Women in AI, together with their German entrepreneurship at one point, and I'm proud to announce that with the combination of a few entities in Silicon Valley and Stanford, there's going to be a conference day about Remarkable Women in AI in September at the very famous Xerox Park in Palo Alto. So if we have females here who would like to participate, I may do it hybrid, so people can actually dial in as a speaker, as a moderator, as a participant. Please let me know. And then there are all the other relationships with universities that I'm working very closely with. Please don't take a picture of this slide, and I'll tell you in a second why. First of all, I started a podcast around 2 weeks ago, and my first speaker was actually, believe me or not, Fabian, because of the timing of Rise of AI. And then there's a good friend of ours, of many of ours here in this room, probably now, Olaf Groth. He's German, he's a professor at Berkeley, very established. And then the third one is actually going to be Nestor. So on Friday, on my podcast, you can listen to whatever he says today, but much, much more in a podcast session about the AI index report. And last but not least, and this is why you cannot take a picture, I'm not allowed to actually distribute that PDF, but Nestor and I have written a report, a story in the Venture Capital magazine here in Germany in preparation to the innovation conference that takes place next week in Düsseldorf by the Nordrhein-Westfalen Innovation Bank. And they are putting this out tomorrow online, but I'm not allowed to share the PDF. It's a link, and I guess you have to subscribe or whatever. So, but I want to give you a taste of what we have done. We used some data from the AI index report. And I would say at this point, the content, the main message in that report is very similar to some of the messages that I'm hearing here at the conference about what Germany can do to actually get ahead of the curve and be a leader in certain segments. And it's not necessarily that we have to compete on eye level and create the next large language model. That game may be a little bit over, but there's a lot of opportunities in Germany when it comes to our core values that we are known for worldwide without any question. Biotechnology, nano, healthcare, automotives, stuff like that. And that's one of the main messages of that report, of the story. Individually, again, as I said, the Transatlantic is something that's free, that's literally a hobby turning into a networking to help everybody. My business model is I have been in Silicon Valley now, believe me or not, 33 years. And I have spent half of my life building startups and the other half building business units for Deutsche Telekom, for Intel and others on the corporate side. And I'm now seeking, interestingly, startup companies out of Germany who would like to enter the United States. Or I have other companies either out of Europe or the United States who would also like to come to the European market. So go-to-market strategy, fundraising is what I do on a daily basis. With that said, let's talk a little bit about the AI index report, and maybe two slides that's normally presented by Nestor is I had the honor to listen to his presentation twice now in Silicon Valley. The first time was an evening event with a bunch of consulates and whatever, and then at Stanford last week. Great presentation, but what I wanted to get across is the global importance of this particular report. I mean, this gentleman goes around and he talks to people in Washington, D.C. on a senator level, or on the TVs and everything that you hear there. So to have him here on stage for all of us, I think is an honor. And with that, I would like to give it over for now to Nestor.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Thanks as well for the kind introduction. And I mean, we have 20 minutes or so remaining. And I'm going to try to distill this report, which is 500 pages, in basically a few key takeaways. But don't let my distillation stop you. I mean, the program's almost over today. You guys can get home, crack open the report, and I expect that all of you will read it front to back in one sitting. That's how engaging it is. Of course, I have to say that I wrote most of the report. So, I mean, if I can't even hype myself up, what is there to say? A little bit about the report before we actually dive into some of the takeaways. What is the AI index? So the AI index was put together in 2017 for the first time. And it was created by a diverse committee of really influential AI thought leaders, people like Jack Clark, who's one of the co-founders of Anthropic, that is arguably currently one of OpenAI's greatest rivals, Eric Brynjolfsson, who's arguably one of the world's leading economists and thought leaders on the economics of AI, and James Manika, who's the senior vice president of research at Google. And these individuals came together with the understanding that AI was really going to be this transformative technology. And it was important to create a resource that could really tell a compelling story of where this technology is. And that's what we do at the Index. We talk about what AI could do now that it couldn't necessarily do before. We talk about economic trends, which countries are leading investment. We talk about trends in responsible AI. Really, I like to think that anything that you might want to know about AI, you could certainly flip through this report and find it there. To actually tell the story of what's going on in AI, we partner with a variety of data vendors, all of whom are pictured here, and we also collect some of our own data for questions that we find to be particularly insightful and particularly interesting. So let's actually get to the takeaways here, and as I present this, Thomas will also be interjecting with some questions about how some of these takeaways relate to the German AI landscape. And again, my one goal here today is to put you guys in a position that when you are at your next dinner party or just kind of chatting at a bar about AI, which everybody talks about these days, you guys will have some very informative and very statistically driven takes to impress your other guests with. So with that, let's begin. So the first take I don't think is surprising to anybody here, but I think when you actually see the manifestation of this take and you see the evidence for how AI is improving, you really get a sense of how much investment there has been in this space and how rapidly the landscape is moving forward. So one of the things that we did at the AI Index is we went to Midjourney, which is arguably one of the world's leading text-to-image generators, and we asked Midjourney to generate a hyper-realistic image of Harry Potter over time. And we asked this prompt to the original version of Midjourney, V1, which was released in February of 2022, all the way up to the most recent iteration. Now, I think this juxtaposition makes it pretty clear. I'll be honest, I'm probably more impressed by the one on the left. I'm personally a fan of postmodern art, and that looks like a Pablo Picasso-esque rendering of Harry Potter. But again, we asked for a hyper-realistic image, and the one on the right, you almost have to squint and look very closely to see that that is not, in fact, Daniel Radcliffe. And there are a lot of different manifestations of the tremendous progress that has been made in AI. I've seen some other presentations today at this conference that have already referenced one of the probably most popular charts in the index report, which was the fact that on a lot of benchmarks or tests for how well AI systems perform, AI systems are already exceeding human capabilities. Now, there is a question to be asked here about why are these systems getting better? Is it just the case that OpenAI is starting to pay everybody a lot better? Are they just serving very good kombucha in Silicon Valley? Like, what's actually going on here? Well, a lot of this is scaling and the scaling laws. So quick show of hands here. Who's familiar with the concept of scaling laws in AI? All right, so a couple of people, not too many though. So that's good because it will make my information even more relevant. So what you're seeing on this chart is you're looking at the estimated training cost of a selection of AI models from 2017 to 2023. On the right, you have some of the more recent popular foundation models. And this model on the left that was launched in 2017 is the original transformer model. This is the model that basically introduced the architecture or the kind of way of building AI systems that now powers virtually every single large language model. So a lot of these modern models like GPT-4 and Gemini, they use that original architecture. And the key difference, beyond some minor tweaks like RLHF, is they basically scale the model. So it was well realized with the launch of GPT-3, which was around 2020, that if you simply feed these models more and more data, they tend to perform better on a lot of tasks. And that's basically what all of these AI companies are doing now. They're pretty much betting that if we feed these systems more data, they're going to get increasingly better, and that's really what you've seen. But as a result of this, some of the state-of-the-art models that are now coming out of Silicon Valley, like GPT-4, we estimate at the index that they cost $80 million to train, and Gemini, Google's flagship model, $191 million. And really, there's only a few players in the world that could afford to build such models, and this is really the reason why these models are becoming so expensive. These developers know, or they're betting, that if we train these systems on more data, they're going to be better. To train a system on more data, you need more computational resources, which you see on the x-axis. And as you scale up computational resources, you scale up the cost fairly massively.
Now, Next, a quick question then. If you look at this slide and then the previous slide, and obviously being here at Rise of AI in Berlin, it begs the question, where does Europe stand within this bigger picture of LLMs in regards to the cost for training, but also the resources available? And I would say, is it game over for Europe on LLMs, on the big ones?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say so. I still think there's a lot of value in training these kinds of systems, and it's not necessarily about, I mean, what a lot of these companies are trying to do are train models that are state of the art, that are better than any other ones. But there's still a lot of value in making models more efficient, ensuring that their latency goes down, ensuring that they could do more with less. And those kinds of research questions in AI don't necessarily require $200 million to do. So yeah, it might be difficult for certain European players to compete with some of the big tech giants unless they have that kind of money to splash around. But there's obviously so much that could be done in the space of AI. So a third trend that personally I'm very excited about, and this was really, I think, one of the most important economic trends that we saw in this year's report, which is that there are now a collection of studies across different fields and different industries, which really show in a very compelling way that AI is associated with more productive work and also faster work and work of a higher quality. What you're seeing on the slide is you're seeing a cross-study comparison of how fast it took a bunch of different groups of people to do various tasks. Each of these rows represents a different task in a different study, and the 100% baseline is representative of the speed with which it took people to do this task that did not have AI tools. Now, in these tasks, there were certain groups of individuals that did have AI tools, and they were able to finish the tasks anywhere between 73 to 26% times quicker, which is a fairly massive improvement in terms of the speed with which the task is done. You also see similar results coming out of the world of consulting. In a similar study where there were one group of consultants that were not given AI tools and another group of consultants that were given AI tools like GPT-4, those with AI were more productive, they were more quick, and they also produced work of a substantially higher quality. Now, there's one additional thing that I'll note here. There was a third study that we featured in the index, which I also think paints a very important picture here, in which there were three groups. There was one group that didn't get any AI to do a task, and then there were two other groups which got the same AI. But one of those two groups was told that the AI was bad, that it could do good things, but sometimes was prone to hallucination. And the other group was told that the AI was good, that it was always reliable, got the job done very well. Now, if you compare the ability of these three groups to actually do the work, both of the groups that had access to AI did the work better than the group that didn't have access to AI. But of the two groups, it was actually the group that was told they were given bad AI that did a lot better than the group that was given good AI. And the researchers basically speculated that what happens is that if you are told that the AI is very good, a lot of these employees just went on autopilot. They just kind of stopped checking the output of a lot of these systems. And for anybody that's used AI, I mean, it's good, it gets the job done, but it's also prone to making a lot of errors. And that's an important, I think, business consideration. If your company is integrating these tools, it's still very important, it's still very essential that you keep humans in the loop with how you use AI. A point about scientific progress that I think is very valuable. I think when you go to these conferences and when you think about AI, everybody talks about ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, but there's been tremendous progress that has been made in science as a result of AI. So many models that have come out that have done tremendous work. And I mean, I could sit here for 5 hours and talk about these models. I'll talk about one that I think illustrates this point in the best possible way. Alpha-minescence is a model that was released by Google in the last year, and its job was to classify minescence mutations. So a minescence mutation is a mutation of a human protein. Now, the important point to know here is that scientists estimate that there are roughly 75 million different minescence mutations. Prior to alpha-minescence, human annotators were able to successfully annotate 0.1% of that 75 million different mutations. Alpha-minescence comes along, and it has so far been able to classify 89%. So we've gone from 0.1 to 89%, and that's kind of the power of using some of these large language models and AI systems in the domain of science, and that's something that we talk about at great lengths in the index. A fifth highlight here, and this is personally one of my favorite to share just because I think this is a very pretty chart. It also took my data analyst team a very long time to actually figure out how to program this on Python. So you bet that any presentation I do, I'm going to find a way to squeeze it in. This is looking at survey data from McKinsey. And I mean, all jokes aside, I actually think this is probably one of the most important charts in the report, especially for a business audience. And in this survey, McKinsey basically asked individuals, managers that were integrating AI into their business function, what percentage of them reported realizing cost decreases, and what percentage of them reported realizing revenue increases. And the important thing to kind of focus on here is the last row, average across all activities. 42% of managers using AI reported realizing cost decreases, and 59% reported realizing revenue increases. Now, I'm just a humble academic. I write a report and make a lot of fancy charts. I don't know anything about running a business, but I do know that if you're decreasing costs and increasing revenue, all else being equal, you're putting yourself in a position to outshine your competition. And I think what this chart is really showing is you could obviously say speculatively that, of course, AI is going to lead to business gains. But this chart is showing that from a data perspective, it does really seem to be the case that businesses that are using AI are putting themselves in a position to race ahead of their competition. And then a final trend here before we maybe leave some time for audience questions. So one of the things that we did in the report this year and last year for the first time is started thinking about how the public actually feels about AI. And what you're seeing on this chart is you're looking at the percentage point change in opinions on AI in a variety of countries from 2022 to 2023. So Ipsos did a survey on AI, and it did it before ChatGPT in 2022 and after ChatGPT in 2023, and you can compare how people's answers to different questions have changed. And this is looking at how much have these answers changed year over year. So you could see a bunch of different questions. Do you agree that you have a good understanding of what AI is? Do you trust companies that use AI? The one that I've highlighted here is asking, do you agree with the statement that products and services using AI make you nervous? And you'll notice that for every country included in the sample, there is substantially more nervousness reported now than there was in 2022. And this is actually a very important point and a very important issue, because if you look at how a lot of this public opinion data is disaggregated nationally, it's really the case that a lot of non-Western nations like Indonesia, Thailand, and Mexico are actually very bullish about AI. They're very excited, whereas the nations that actually score the lowest in terms of pessimism, I'm sorry to say, are Germany, the United States, and a lot of other Western nations. And that, of course, has a lot of very important implications when you think about AI technology and how it's going to develop and unfold.
And for me, just to add to that, when we picked the slide and the topics out of that massive report, we kept in mind that we are here on stage with applied AI. So we were trying to pick a few things that are related directly to applied AI. But there's so much more to cover there. And one is, I put that slide in a very last minute because you had your favorite slide before. The one that was last is one of my favorite ones, because if you look at every single country has increased the mistrust of AI, you have to ask yourself the question, what does that mean? How do we solve that? Because if we don't solve it, the numbers can only go up. And if it goes up, it's going to be counterproductive. And then it can, all kind of things can happen. So we need to ask us, from the government perspective, from an investor's perspective, from a corporate perspective, how do we educate the public about AI, the pros and the cons? It's not all perfect, but that is something for me when I saw this slide that made me nervous, that if we don't fix that and address it, something bad may happen. And the second one is, which we didn't put actually, but I just thought about it, because there was a lot of topics this morning about research, and I just reminded myself, Germans are really good in research. We are really good. We have a whole structure in the country with universities and Fraunhofer and DFKI and what have you. We may not be as good as, for example, the Americans when it comes to taking the research projects and commercialize or productize. That's what the Americans are really good at. And there is a whole section about research and professors and where do they end up? Do they go to the industry? Maybe you want to add a few comments on the research element of your report.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the research and development trends, yeah, Germany actually does tend to stack up fairly well.
Yeah.
I think it's really the case, and I think this was made in a presentation earlier, this point, is that there seems to be a tremendous gap between the investments in a lot of these countries, which is suggestive of the fact that there's really a skill not only in doing the research, but then actually spinning it off and turning it into something commercializable, and that's something that Americans seem to really excel in.
Yeah.